So analogy here is that there are times in meditation when everything will be flat. Flat, what I mean, times in our life, in our practice, when there is not enough enthusiasm because there is none of that wave to catch. You see? So we just float there. But we need to be ready. When the wave comes, we catch that wave. But we have to be out in the sea. You can't sit on the shore and wait for the wave, because by the time you run into, you will not make it. So the sadhana here is given the analogy. You're doing it anyway, you are in a sadhana, because you will miss the wave, Because when the wave comes, you need to be ready to jump on that board and ride it into that tunnel of nirvana.
So over recent months, I've felt that my commitment and the intensity of my sadhana has been going down quite a bit. And at first, I thought it was probably just because the last immersion in Gut Soundstoff was receding into the background somewhat, and I just needed more exposure, and I get my mojo back again. Yeah. Then about a month ago, I was watching your interview in which where you talk about your own process and your own sadhana, and it really rekindled a very strong aspiration in myself. And I thought, naturally enough, that this would have the effect of boosting my meditation again, or giving it a bit of a lift. And so I was very surprised and a bit disconcerted when I found exactly the opposite seemed to happen, that I just seemed to lose it altogether. It was really like as if my normal will to practice had just been unplugged, and even to the point where I'd get all set up and sit down and everything, and I wouldn't even feel motivated to close my eyes. I'd just be looking around the room and thinking, what's all this about? What's the point? Yeah. There have been kind of two explanations, conflicting and trying to come to the fore. One is that I've just discovered that, contrary to what I thought about myself, I'm really just a lazy sod after all. And that I just need to get back and start doing it. And the other is that, like I said, it's like something has been unplugged, but nothing has taken its place, at least not so far. And so I've just felt like in a kind of no man's land. Sometimes I except when I get kriyas, which sometimes I got quite intensely, but just left to, as it were, my own devices, it's been really just fizzled. So my question basically is, am I just being lazy and lacking in motivation, or is there something else going on that I don't understand?
You did say that you kind of have your own explanations. In addition to that, do you have other insights, perhaps, some kind of sudden revelations that, other than, let's say, blaming lack of incentive, lack of discipline, lack of commitment. Is there anything else that you feel maybe could provide a justifiable, for the lack of other more fitting term, reasons? Just that before reflecting to this from the perspective of what's happening, as it were, beneath in terms of energy of it all. So do you feel?
My kind of optimistic theory was that that the whatever discipline I'd put into sadhana previously was fairly part from the personal will, and there was, I suppose, the hope that the personal will was being to some extent disactivated, and that something larger could come into play. That's really the only...
The insight that you came up with, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the insight that kind of was there. Do you think that is true?
Oh.
I'm just curious. Do you think it's true? Is it a sort of kind of like a fitting narrative to... I'm not being at all in any way kind of questioning or being, let alone being sarcastic. I'm genuinely curious, because insights are very important. And there are insights and there are insights. There are insights that are illumining in nature, and they show the way, they lead the way. And there are insights that also feel as if they are highlighting something, whereas in fact they are justifications. They're like, well, you know what, because of this or because of that. And the mind, of course, is designed in such a way that to come up with these explanations, particularly in the relational angle, particularly when it comes to others, not ourselves. You see, in this case, it's more like self-examinatory.
Certainly, there have been moments when I felt quite strongly that this might be the case, and I did relate it to this sense of aspiration, having suddenly grown stronger at a certain point in relation to watching that. Which was why I was so surprised when it seemed to have produced the opposite effect in my practice.
Mm-hmm. And finally, where you are, would you like that enthusiasm to return? Or, like looking for an alternative example so as to then use it to bounce off back into this, what you brought out as an inquiry. It's like when we wanted something for a long time, and then it's a kind of became very, very a matter of, well, at some point that's what I wanted, right? Like, I'm going to give a silly example because I love silly examples. Like, I wanted to have a Jaguar, but I never had enough money for Jaguar, particularly the one that James Bond drives. Or I wanted to have Aston Martin, particularly from that movie. And that model, just like, really, it's cool, it's sexy, it's understated elegance. It's everything about the car that I want to drive. And you never were able to have that. Well, because reasons are obvious. There are too many people want that car. There are not that many. Okay, so it becomes a competition in means. But since you are obviously not that foolish, you're just simply suffering the repercussions of a good taste, right? You were driving other cars. I don't know, like Renault, maybe. Okay, Fiat. But one way or another, you kind of felt one day I will drive that Jaguar, and so that as the day comes closer, and kind of like suddenly there are means available, what have you, and then revisiting that desire, it doesn't have that oomph in it anymore. It doesn't take you really, your heart is no longer there. All right, so what's the big deal? What am I going to do with it? Okay, I'll drive from here to there. And where I live, okay, the boys will run, then someone will decide to scratch it or something, nasty happens to it, then I have to park it properly and maintain it. It's a headache, heck of a headache. So to cut the story short, the whole thing fizzled away into thin air. So that what held very strong, supported by that desire and the incentive and the that whole propensity to like really one day proving you can, knowing you deserve it, because obviously you know that you are that kind of guy. I ought to drive that car. I don't care. James Bond, what am I, After all, it's just a fiction. It's a movie, right? And the car is real. And then you can't find in you, like, really, with this money now, for this car? That's ridiculous. It's plainly ridiculous, I don't care, like I leave my car, my Renault, my Peugeot, in the rain, in the dust, in elements, all the birds poop on it, and I don't care. I don't need to wax it all the time, I don't need to take it to the, like all that service. So it's gone. Your desire is no longer there. And so, but the means are there. You see, so you do something else with this means. I'm doing this on purpose, this analogy. See? Because this analogy is when we kind of mix deliberately profane and sacred. The desire for, let's say, obviously meditation is never for the sake of meditation. Therapeutically, yes, there are a lot of reasons why we should meditate. But ultimately, we all know, at least in the context of these exchanges, that meditation there to serve as means to the greater goal. So fusing this, right, this kind of deliberate fusion of sacred and profane, what do you feel? You see, this is why I'm asking you this. I'm bringing this example. Is the desire for that what you felt, what you held, is it possible that there is this sluggishness and this kind of lack of interest and lack of motivation, as you said, motivation, could be also heralding something else? And I don't want to now join you in finding the valid enough or maybe even spiritually much more advanced, superior reasons that completely puts you out of any need to even question why motivation is gone. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, first of all, I the strange thing is I don't feel any sense of loss for losing this motivation. The motivation as I knew it before. It's like that. It's the strange thing. It's just like so what?
Mm-hmm.
That's for the actual energy itself. Then I kind of feel, well, I'm not being much of a Satika or whatever.
Okay, then let's just make it very simple now. So before, when you did have this, let's say, motivation, and you've spent, let's say, regular times in meditation, would that provide you with results that would make meditation truly as a worthwhile time spending, so that you know that having meditated, kind of, I don't need to go there, but you know very well, it like took off that accumulated stress of recent encounters, events, strain, travel, whatever, something that you just, like, or simply filled you in with this renewed sense of, or simply cleanse the windows of perception, suddenly everything is crispier, make you feel that inner joy, that bliss. So does all that comes by itself without you meditating? So that's what I'm asking you. So do you see what I mean? So like, do you still have other means than crossing your legs, sitting on a cushion, and then getting the benefits of that what was just outlined, just in brief?
I really don't know.
No, you have to know. You of course you do know. If you look like, if meditation before gave you sense of increased sense of perception, if not acute experience of beatitude, but even glimpses of that, is expansion of the heart. And like I can now go into more that poetic language, that feeling this sense of infinity, oneness with everything, feeling sense of love, feeling sense of, all that. Is it all there at all times? So meditation, as it were, no longer provides that access, no longer gives this, let's say, sense of renewal, and not being motivated enough, right? Could be because of various reasons, of which I would like to speak in a moment, but I want us to simply here see very clearly whether this is indeed a shift, a qualitative shift, evolutionary shift, or simply being subjected to inertia. You see, it's very important. It's very simple, but you can see it's very important. Inertia is one thing, and qualitative shift is another. So, for example, as an experiment, often advised, long-time meditators, see if you stop meditating how you feel in 1 week time, in 2 weeks time, in 3 weeks time. I'm talking about people who have meditated decades. The people of your generation, particularly, they were among those pioneers in the West who adopted meditation into their household life as a part of life.
Just a point, I haven't really been meditating for many years. Maybe...
No, I know that,
Yeah.
but I'm giving this as an example. I know that, Luis. Of course I know that. I'm just giving this example. It would be advised to them to see how it feels. You see? I also met those who are or were, at the time, afraid to miss a meditation. Like literally, they feel that missing a meditation almost going to ruin something that they have been accumulating in their understanding over a period of a very long time. So not skipping meditation was like skipping meditation was a no-no. See? So this is where this is for absolute, this conversation is totally relevant for all of us, completely. So it's not just taking place here between us. It's a prime example of how this is relevant to us all. So that's why I've asked you if this, what comes with meditation as a byproduct, renewed sense of acuity of perception, bliss, sense of beatitude, equilibrium, just simply being at ease. All these are byproducts of simply meditating, knowing what you're doing and knowing how to meditate, and you've learned that, you've had already, you've tasted that. So is it there without meditation? That's what I'm asking, as simple as that. Is it there? And therefore, maybe that lack of motivation is simply like, why am I sitting there if it doesn't really add anything into my life?
I think it is there, and I think I can also say that it's not just inertia. It hasn't stopped just because of inertia.
No, I'm not. Now you chose to respond to that. I'm asking, is there a bliss? Is there joy in your life? Is there like, do I need to be more explicit? It's like I feel like you feel, I don't want, I'm not meant to put you on a spot. You are already. So like really you've asked for it, so might as well roll with it. So like, do you feel that you don't need to meditate? It's just, that means just spill it out like that. You don't need to meditate, and there's no motivation because there's bliss, beatitude, sense of connection, love, compassion, feeling, like all that what meditation really is supposed to bring into our lives, if not facilitating self-realization, which of course it does and it doesn't. It paves the way, right? As that very very, very well put response by Chogyam Trungpa, right? Speaking of whether meditation or spiritual practice per se, right, brings the desired goal of enlightenment, right? Or is it all just a matter of accident? And his response was, well, no, it doesn't, but meditation make one accident more accident prone. Something along these lines, This is a brilliant response. See, so it's like you're increasing it 10,000 times more. So if somehow you will be a recipient of grace, maybe 1 in a million, you suddenly shrink that algorithmically to much greater probability.
I feel I could live just right now in my life. I can't speak for the future, but I could live without meditation, and I think and continue in my present state, which is not especially blissful, I have to say, but I certainly don't feel any sense of dependence on meditation.
I wasn't alluding to that. If I was kind of like a bit younger, I would have already said, okay, in that case, pass microphone to someone else. This is why we're wasting time. See, but now I'm kind of like much more laid back, and I feel, why to dismiss your inquiry. But really, really, you should hear yourself, right? Why would you bring it out? See, there's a complete paradox, contradiction upon contradiction. This is why I'm asking you more than you were asking me. See? So the inquiry needs to come from you. The inquiry comes from you. Then all I do is reflect whatever I can, whatever I know, whatever based on experience and knowledge. I don't come up with the pulling out rabbits out of the hat. So therefore, you see, so you've shared that, you felt it's worthy of sharing. You felt this somehow needs response. And yet, in no time, we found out that it is all based on contradiction. So do you or you don't, or you don't? So like you want to share with me, you don't have motivation, and at the same time, you can just not meditate, and your life will just carry on the same. So, you see, I'm not a head teacher. I don't care whether you meditate or not. Do you see what I mean? I don't care if any of you meditate or not. Like, why would I? It's just like totally, maybe in some cases where this more emphatic, maybe there is some kind of strong, energetic, even contractual agreement, even if it's a temporary one, then of course it's my job to motivate someone, right? Then I would say, well, guess what? You have to be able to ride the waves of how Mother Prakriti spins it all. So, but I deliberately didn't go there, you see? I wanted to hear from you where the inquiry comes from. How acute that inquiry? How bad do you want that Aston Martin? If you don't want that Aston Martin, you're absolutely free to spend the funds for something else. Those kind of cars that I talk about particular, I don't know, 500,000 bidding price starts. Because they're very few. They're collector's items. You see? They're very rare because they were in a classic James Bond movie. There was numbered production, So there are much more millionaires out there than Aston Martins, let's put it this way. Nobody rich loves to drive Ferraris, loud, vulgar cars, because they want to show that they have money and a lot of it. Driving Aston Martin like that doesn't immediately show that you have a lot of money. Out of 10,000 people, maybe 10 truly will understand how freaking expensive your car is. You can buy at least 2 Ferraris. Ferraris today are much cheaper than they were in the 90s. They're no longer exclusive. You see? So enlightenment is not as exclusive as it used to be. Very, very important. See? Very important to have this distinction. Which car do you want to drive? Do you want to drive that car at all? So, if there is an inquiry, this inquiry rests on something. If it rests only on curiosity, then no. Did you hear what I'm reflecting back? So, like, you lost interest, you lost motivation, and in the analysis of exchanges, it makes no difference. So how can that be inquiry? Means you don't trust your judgment, you don't trust your own experience. You see? So if you come in a different attitude, if you're asking me, I'm here as I am, I don't know nothing, I don't know. What shall I do? That's different. Then I have to put that cloak or wear the shoes and just start clobbering you with the, baseball bat or something, like go after you. Just like, you're not meditating. Come here, like, or go and start just giving the whole philosophy of yoga now, the Prakriti, there is a Sattva, there's Rajas, there's Tamas, You need to know the hour. You need to know they all rotate. You cannot be in sattva all the time. It's Mother Nature. It needs 3 gunas. And these 3 gunas are mutable, constantly in flux. So our sadhana revolves around that, subjected to that. Only when one goes and enters the phase of this exclusive, unique situation, when the Kundalini fully awakened and when there is real ascent, then we are outside time and space. At least in that phase. We are no longer subjected to such degree to these gunic interactions. You see? And one in whom Kundalini is active, they meditate all the time. Sat on a bench in meditation already. Sat in a car when one doesn't need to drive, boom, gone. You know, sadhana is like you don't know anymore whether you're meditating or not. That's a real state. So no, there's no need. This is what we discuss there. See? All the effort applied up to that point, that's it. You see? No lottery, no money made, you driving that damn Aston Martin. Or Aston Martin driving you. You see? And you've no idea like who's the benefactor, who's the patron, where the money came from. And the funny thing is you don't even give a damn about whether this is Aston Martin anymore or not. Because you're driving with such speed that you don't even know how to change the gears anymore, and you know, like. So outside of that time, we always subjected to these permutations of the gunas. So just as there is an hour of sattva, there is hour of rajas, there is hour of tama, guna. It all also like increases like what in our experience, what in our field. I mean, I've asked you, but like, you don't live on an island. You do. You live on the same island. But, well, not quite the island I meant, right? So you don't live on a completely isolated island, right? You have means of communication. You know what's happening in the world. And the world now is convulsing in all this, right? And the charade is being like just on a display. The collapse of everything. That alone rubs us off behind the scenes, right? Everything we grew up and believing now collapses like a house of cards. See? All the like just empty slogans where we start our immersion, what I've mentioned on the very first evening, I think, was it first evening, I think, you know, the liberal democracy and all the rest of it. No, we don't. We are bordering fascism. We're just pretending it's not happening because, no, we're living in a time when genocide is recorded. Genocide is recorded. For one soldier died on one side, there are thousands of children died on the other. And at some point, we're numb to that news because we have to. Or we just click like just because we feel obliged. You know, at least I don't ignore that in my feed. Or you go there as a coward. No, you. Like one goes as a coward and don't throw this into my feed. Enough. I know there's atrocities. I know there's genocide, but what can I do? This impacts us from behind the scenes. You see, this is why I've asked you, do you have any insights other than, let's say, spiritual insights? Because these are spiritual insights. We all are lacking motivation. Do you know how many young people right now questioning what the f I've been studying for? You know, what am I doing? Look what's happening in the United States. Not since Vietnam War, youth rose up the way they did now. Sociologists saying that this came as a totally and entirely unexpected phenomenon. How many of you are aware of that? How many of you are aware of that? Of what's happening in the United States right now, around the world, but in the United States. Students of university campuses of all nationalities, of all races, protesting against the genocide in the way they haven't done it since the 60s. And sociologists are totally out of answers because it was believed that this was unique time of counterculture, that this never to be repeated, okay? Because the lobotomy of the brain was manufacturing consent in such a way that these young people supposed to have that part in their heart and in their mind aborted by now. Well, guess what? It didn't. The youth rose. And it's not just like, oh, that's a bunch of Arabs. They always complain. They always on the, No, that's a nasty piece of lie. The truth is, young people will not have it. You see? So they were put down, face down on the pavement. They were put cufflinks. They were arrested in the United States. Who have seen the poster? The Statue of Liberty being pinned down by two policemen, and they're putting cufflinks on her. Why? Because the most important amendment, the right to strike for human rights, is being violated in the country where it's constitutionally protected, supposed to be. So you have no motivation to meditate? There are generations of people, right, have no motivation to live in a charade anymore. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Unless we live with the head in the sand, buried so deep we don't want to hear it. No. This is rise of a new consciousness. And the rise of a new consciousness is accompanied by these catastrophic potential events, because it's not going to be like, oh, okay, I'm no longer be policing the world. I'm no longer be spreading democracy by dropping bombs everywhere and showing everyone with the sleeves rolled up to here, Why are they rolled up to here? Who knows why the sleeves are rolled up to here? Well, you don't want to dirty your beautiful shirt in blood up to here, because the hands are all covered in blood, because it's a bloodbath. So all this impacts us in our sleep, whilst we eat, I've stopped eating Israeli dates well before the campaign to boycott Israeli-produced products. In my sadhana, the juiciest, who knows that 80% of Mashdul dates come from Israel? You don't know that? Oh, gosh. Filters, no more attendance to the retreat if people don't know where produce comes. It's ridiculous. Like young people now, like in graduation, this is the most beautiful, like I could barely hold teas back because of this violent suppression of the students' protests. Violence of that kind haven't been seen in the United States since the 60s. In Europe, the same. In France, it's the same. Pinning you down with your face to the pavement. For what? For speaking what is obvious? This is liberal democracy / neo-fascism. So, the taste of Mashdul dates when I was in my sadhana were disgusting. And I was thinking, why is it? But I couldn't go and eat somewhere. I go and eat at least once a week. They scoop me out of my hermit-like apartment, Elzevir Terrace in London. And I'll comply and go with my friends. And it's the best food. But I know everything that chef goes through, whoever touch my food. People who go through Kundalini here, people who are authentic glow, in this room, could relate to what I'm saying. You should be. At some point, the sensitivity is so heightened, you may not know it literally, I'm not talking about conversation the chef had with his wife, but I know it affects the food. See? So everything you eat, like it took me weeks before I found milk that actually could be used, even though all was organic. So 20 years ago, I've stopped buying mashdul dates from Israel because they were filled with that, how these dates are produced. Okay? They are carrying the vibrations of suppression. They're carrying the vibration of sorrow, pain, of so many people. 75 years now, back then it was 20 years ago, so 55 years, that's a long time. That's at least 2.5 generations of people. At least. So, what brought tears to my eyes, and also hope, and a pride, and hope in us human beings, is when I saw this in response to this violent suppression. Students of a very prestigious university in the United States, at this moment I forgot, but it will come and I will tell you, or I will check. Columbia University, exactly. They were carrying candles on the graduation day and simply gave silence. This is the rise of new consciousness. Okay? And of course, there are many, many people today who lose that motivation for life itself, not just for meditation. Because the charade is so obvious, the lies are so obvious, the whole thing is so rotten obvious that it cannot be covered up by any glitter that is being lavishly poured on everything, so that we become blind, so like we become distracted. The distraction. No. Young people want to know why they're here, why they live, what they live for, why they're born in the country with the highest GDP in the world. So, what comes of us, Louis? You tell me. See? So motivation, of course, our motivation can be immediately colored what is happening in the world. See? So this is why I'm asking you, if you're carrying that bubbling sense of bliss, if you're carrying that joy, that unimpeded hope, then you don't need to meditate. I'm not going to lie to you, pretend, or what do I do? I don't have a dog in a race. Then you don't need to do this. At the same time, we need to know there are these tendencies as well. And we spoke about it, I think you were there with us maybe. I don't know if it's Good Sandstorf or where we spoke about it, where I talked about how one need to learn to structure one sadhana as a surfer. You see, surfers, they cut through the waves and then they float up there. They wait until the wave comes. They know, the experienced surfers, they're not going to they're not going to jump on any first wave. They want to wait for that. They know, they deeply connected, these guys, girls. I observed them for 2 years in Costa Rica. And then the wave come, and then all that, what prior to that was just floating, lying down, belly flat on a surfboard, is then very quickly you catch that wave. See, you catch that wave. So, analogy here is that there are times in meditation when everything will be flat. Flat, what I mean, times in our life, in our practice, when there is not enough enthusiasm because there is none of that wave to catch. You see? So we just float there. But we need to be ready. When the wave comes, we catch that wave. But we have to be out in the sea. You can't sit on the shore and wait for the wave, because by the time you run into, you will not make it. So the sadhana here is given the analogy. You're doing it anyway, you are in a sadhana, because you will miss the wave, Because when the wave comes, you need to be ready to jump on that board and ride it into that tunnel of nirvana. Yeah, have you heard that? Yeah. It's when the wave curls in perfect tunnel, and it's called nirvana among the surfers. Very fitting. So, to conclude, I would suggest simply for you to, just continue with that inquiry, what could be the reason, without just spending too much time, and ask yourself, if I want to reboot that, well, this is a perfect opportunity, to shake it up and reboot and go back home with that renewed sense. But then I want to add something else, so that, remember also, it has to be creative. And you, of all people, who love words for their cadence, for what they produce, should be able to relate to that more than others. So it has to be creative, see? So soon as you feel routine settles, you break that routine because it's easier to come back. You see, you break that routine. You don't just, so that we're all different as well. Someone have said that inspiration, I found not timeless. Funny enough, it's Igor Stravinsky who said that. Russian composer. Well, he's not my favorite composer, not exactly, but he's considered to be nevertheless as one of the great composers of the early 20th century, right? But he has purportedly said that the way to inspiration through discipline. So inspiration comes through discipline. So, and I think there is this analogy in arts, plenty. So, unless one takes that instrument and start plucking the strings and something, it's not like having instrument getting dusty or sleeping in a it's kind of the case, yeah, and just hoping when inspiration comes. No, it comes when you are, fingering it, and this is where it kind of really, okay, and then it goes like, then it's like, okay, yeah, this chord, yeah. And then you feel like, yeah, rock and roll. That's easy. But just looking at the case and forgetting it, and well, inspiration come, I'll be rock and roll. No, rock, remember how, what's his name? Jack Black, right? Said, if you are rock and roll, you are rock and roll. If you are not rock and roll, you are not rock and roll. It's a very simple, very, very Zen saying, So just don't forget to roll, that with it. And then the inspiration will come. Meditation is a flower. It gives fruit eventually. Of course, people who get attached to meditation, and if they see this is the only way, then they're missing something. They misunderstand something. Unless meditation becomes spontaneous, in other words, unless that pouring in and pouring out, right? Pouring one in, as the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi used to say. And a beautiful analogy. It's a very beautiful analogy. We pour silence into the dynamic sphere of life. And then we pour that dynamism back into silence. We offer one into another. What happens is that the dynamic sphere of life becomes filled, infused with silence. Excuse me. And the silent sphere of life becomes dynamic. It's very beautiful. See, it's in very, very simple terms. They stand in opposition, the silent and the silence and the dynamism. By act of pouring one into another, this infusion takes place to such degree at some point that dynamism is then completely enlivens that what prior to that was just maybe remote abstract silence. And that dynamic sphere of life is steeped in silence. I'm just continuing that metaphor now, and taking the liberty now to speak it and following with the teaching of the great master. See? And when that one is infused with the other, then the purpose of meditation is fulfilled. Then we can't tell them apart. And this is beautifully exemplified in the teachings of Kashmir Shaivism. See, so the absolute and the relative does not stand in opposition to each other. So, whatever you make out of it.